Alrighty, everyone. So I am so excited for today's conversation. Today I have Barbara with me. She is an author who took some of her most painful parts and memories of her childhood and transformed them into something so powerful. She's the creator of Spells for Surviving a Haunted Childhood, a deeply emotional and creative grimoire that blends storytelling, healing, and reflection in a way that's both raw and beautifully written. Her work explores trauma, generational patterns, and what it really looks like to turn pain into something so meaningful. I'm so excited to have this conversation today. So, welcome to the show, Barbara.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to hop on here and chat.
No, thank you. I'm so excited to talk to you about all the things. So, I usually start off each episode with a couple rapid fire icebreakers, just something to break the ice, get to know you a little bit better, kind of
Sure.
outside of everything that we're going to be talking on today's episode. So, what's something you're
Absolutely.
secretly good at?
Okay, I didn't realize this until recently, but I'm actually pretty good at baking and decorating cakes. I had no idea. I did my first cake, kind of had to for my toddler, and it turned out fantastic. It was a taco cake in the
I
shape of
love
a
that.
taco. It was super neat. So I surprised myself with that.
I'm also in my little baking phase, but I suck at decorating them. So it'll taste great, but it'll look like a 2-year-old made it. Like that's just the outcome of my work.
If you
But I love
want
that.
a suggestion, always ice a cold cake, so make sure that you're freezing it in between, like freezing it.
That is
It
a good
helps.
one because
Yeah,
then everything melts. I've learned
yeah.
from experience. Yeah.
Everything just looks really droopy.
Yeah. Abstract. It gets the abstract look
Yeah.
after a while, but that's okay. So what's something you're secretly bad at?
Mm, gosh, I don't even know. What would I secretly be bad at? Honestly, I would say I'm secretly bad at reading.
That's
As
so
ironic
interesting.
as that is, with my brain and the way that it works, I have to be completely isolated and able to focus 100% in order to be able to read books. So usually I reserve that for vacations or late at night when everyone's asleep.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. As a mom, like I cannot, there's no way I can crack a book open. I'll end up reading the same sentence like over and over and
Yes.
over again. And I'm like, what am
Yes.
I reading?
Mhm.
So I
Yep.
could agree with that. I would say mine is actually riding a bike. I don't know how I've only ridden a bike like 3 times. I need to get better at it. I see people riding bike all the time and I'm like, I want to teach my daughter how to ride a bike. How am I going to do that if I don't know how to ride a bike? But
You
whatever.
can do this. You've
I
got
think so.
this.
Yeah, she tells me all the time. My daughter's 3 and Mommy, you can do hard things. And I'm like, you're right, girlfriend. You
I love
totally
that.
are. Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, I'm obsessed with habits and I always like to ask people, what is the first thing you do in the morning?
First thing I do, I'm a coffee girl. I have to have my coffee. I'm a very silent
Cheers.
waker. Yes. I love just taking a moment for myself and just reflecting on what I need to get done on the day. I usually am not very social first thing in the morning. And not that I'm grumpy. I just like to be to myself for just a minute.
I can totally relate with that because I'm the same way. I usually don't have a moment to myself at times just because I have a newborn right now. So, like, he just kind of,
Yeah.
yeah,
You
takes
get
that
that.
moment.
You
But
have
yeah, but I
no
love it.
space for like the
Exactly.
next 3 years. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I just started getting a moment to myself with my daughter, and then
Mhm.
the newborn came and we started right
Of
back
course.
over again. Yeah.
I
But I
understand.
do agree with that. I'm so quiet in the mornings. Like my daughter and like my husband, they're a little more chatty. They have a little bit more energy. And it's not even energy
Yeah.
wise. Like I can get things done. I just like I'm very like in my own mind first thing in the morning. So
Uh-huh.
I could totally relate with that. My next question is what's the last thing you do at night?
I always end the day with my husband. He's my best friend. We always
Oh.
take time to just chat about each other's day and what happened and what we plan on doing the next day. It's just it's really good to end the day on a good note with your best friend.
I love that. That's literally everyone's dream, I think. But
I'm
I
living
couldn't
it.
agree more. I love it. I love it. Me and my husband sometimes he does shift work. So sometimes we're on different shifts. And when we are on different shifts and I have to sleep by myself, I'm like, I'm so spoiled. Where's my husband?
Yes.
Yeah. So I could totally relate. I love that. I love that. What is the last thing that made you laugh?
Oh, definitely my toddler. She just turned 2 like this month. and she's hilarious. I can't even she's been big into wanting to tap you hard on the shoulder and just
Mhm.
be like, "Hey," and that's just she's just so silly. She does all sorts of silly things. She'll grab hats and put them on and wanna pretend to be dad and try
Aw.
to, like, look up she looks up to her big sisters a lot, so oh, the last thing that really got us belly laughing is she was giving them raspberries on their knees. It was
That's so funny.
so silly, but she always has us laughing.
That's hilarious. Toddlers are the funniest. And I also think
Yes.
it's so sweet when they try and make you laugh because it's like, what a sweet intention, you know? Like, what a
Yes.
pure little soul. They're just trying to make me smile right now. There's nothing more beautiful in the world. I love it. I love it when they get silly because I love it. Okay. Last rapid fire would be, what are you currently obsessed with?
Oh gosh, my books.
No,
I'm
I don't blame you.
actually yes. So I'm in the process of creating an audiobook of the series. So that's kind of where I'm at right now mentally. I'm obsessing over researching audiobooks and what would be the best route where I should record, how I should record, what I record with, etc. So there's a lot to it and that's kind of what where my mindset is right now, just wanting to make this a really cool immersive listening experience for people.
Well, I absolutely love that because I sometimes, since I have a newborn and a little one, and I don't get to crack open that book sometimes, I'm a big podcast girl, obviously. I'm a big podcast girl, and I also like audiobooks because sometimes it's a nice way for me to kind of like, when everything else is a little bit too noisy, sometimes I'll pop in an audiobook on one ear and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like I regulate somehow, some way. I don't know if it's the tone of the voices, maybe, or like the fact that it's just, I've always been a reader, so I find a lot of comfort in reading.
Yes.
But I love that. Can't wait for the audiobook. I actually, so I'm waiting right now for my physical copies of the book. I have the PDF copy and I'm so excited for the physical copy of the book. So Barbara does this amazing thing where she'll actually sell you the series with a signature in it and it's just so personal and I love it. I cannot wait to get mine. So I just wanted to mention that.
They
But
also come with, like, little bookish goodies like stickers and bookmarks and all that.
I
It's a whole
cannot
fun I know, you're gonna be real excited.
I cannot wait. I collect bookmarks. So I have so many bookmarks. Every time I
Oh,
go to a new
yay.
city, I get a bookmark and a book. That's like one of my things. That's why I obsess over books. But so I cannot wait. Now that I'm even more excited. Didn't
Yeah.
think that was possible, but here I am. Okay. So I wanted to open up the conversation about your series. So your book is called Spells for Surviving a Haunted Childhood. So why spells and not just the typical memoir?
Well, if you can't tell, I'm kind of a spooky girl. I really love the darker things in life, the aesthetic, the vibe. I'm not a self-proclaimed witch, and I don't necessarily believe in witchcraft beyond fairy tales, but I'm big into mental health and meditation and the spooky things in life. So I thought that it would be fun to create these spells that are basically the building blocks to meditation. So the ingredients for each spell is technically grounding the reader. So it's going back through the story that you just read and picking out the things that pull your senses and like something that you touched or something that you saw or something that was tasted. And then the directions is basically long and short of it, it's a positive affirmation. So you're grounding yourself and repeating positive mantras back. And that is the building blocks for meditation. And how cool to give that not only to the new generation of readers, but our generation of readers and even older, because there's so many people that are dealing with their traumas and not in a healthy way. They're letting their past drive their future. And I think having access to more mental health resources like this and learning these spells of meditation is really game changing for the mental health field, I think.
I love that. And I love what you said because it's true in your spells. And I'm so glad that you said it that way. In your spells, it really does ground you to that moment. And I'm not a big meditator, but I want to be. So it's difficult for me. And so one of the things that I've learned, I don't remember where I heard it, but it's really about grounding yourself in that moment and
Mhm.
isolating your senses. So you go and you can think of 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can taste, for example. And then through that series, you really ground yourself in the moment, you're really present, and in that way, you can learn to kind of meditate through grounding yourself. So I love that your spells do that. You know, I actually, having read the spells, I realized that there was some meditative aspect to it, but I would have never been able to put it so eloquently. So I'm so glad that you put it that way because that is a beautiful way to describe your spells. So I
And
love
that's
that.
perfectly fine. There's so many people that jury's out on this as far as some people just skip right over the spells. They just think, "Oh, it's just like a little poem or something and no big deal." But then there's another whole half of my readership that are like, "I'm here for these spells. I'm
Yeah.
highlighting and circling and repeating these spells." I even sell a separate make create your own grimoire journal that helps you like build your own spells and explains what spells are in regards to mental health and meditation and how they're portrayed in the book.
I love that. I really do love that. I personally loved the spells, but especially just because it really made me feel so immersed in that moment. Especially when
Uh-huh.
you talk about like the ingredients, it feels so raw. You feel like you're really there. I don't know. I loved it. I couldn't speak highly enough, but I love the way that you put it and how it ties to mental health. So really thank you for that. So my next question is you describe this as a grimoire, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that the right way.
You
Am I?
are, yeah.
Okay, cool. Grimoire instead of a book. So what does that mean to you?
Well, the technical term for grimoire is a book of spells, and so
Okay.
it is an actual word. I looked it up, and it's just I thought that that was a very interesting play on words because this is my memoir, but it
Exactly,
has a
yeah.
very grim feel to it. So you look at the covers here, and that just screams this little girl has been through some stuff. It screams Tim Burton vibes, that dark, eerie sense, the series of unfortunate events. It gives you that kind of vibe.
I actually wanted to ask you, this is obviously or well, not obviously. So this is a story about your childhood, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what made you finally decide to tell your story? Was it somebody that you were writing it for? I know you're a mom and you have little ones. So what made you finally think like I just can't hold this in any longer?
This has been a lifetime goal of mine. I've
I love it.
always known that my story is unique and interesting, and I've always wanted to write it down, not just for myself, but for my children and their children. Now, I was in extensive trauma therapy for a couple of months, and my therapist really recommended that I start journaling. And when I did, I really was suffering with it. I was going through deep emotions, and I talked to her about it, and she said, "You have to go through that. Feel them. Feel all of the emotions. You have to be sad. This is a sad story. You have to be mad. There are points in your life where you should be enraged, and that's okay. You've never done that before." So I allowed myself to do that. And when I did, there was inspiration right behind that anger. As soon as the anger kind of melted away, I had the spark of inspiration for this whole entire series. I've always known that I wanted my story to be told in three separate stages because I feel like it's very definitive. There are three separate parts of my life that feel completely opposite from the others. And I've always known that that's how I wanted my story to be told. So that kind of came naturally. But yeah, I've always known that I wanted to write my story. This is just something that I'm really proud of myself to be able to have done at 35 and not when I'm in my old age and wishing that I would have or could have.
No, absolutely. And it's so amazing. It's so beautifully written and I couldn't
Thank
agree
you.
more. And I love that you're able to have it now, especially because you have the little ones, so they're able to have that. And I really do think it is the book does talk about really dark concepts, but I don't think it's a book that's not for children. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I wrote it intentionally for children, especially in part one. There's two specific events that are harder to discuss than others that directly describe child abuse. So those are a little hard. I wouldn't recommend your 7-year-old to read this.
Yeah.
However, 12, 13, and up, I would absolutely recommend. I think that that's going to help children understand emotional regulation early in life, and especially any child that might be in or out of the foster system. I feel like this is really going to resonate with them, even though me, myself, I never entered the system. I think all of us could identify the same as feeling unheard and unseen and unloved and feeling alone. And just knowing that there's other people out there has been very humbling, but quite remarkable as well because you don't realize what all everybody's going through.
Yeah. And we spoke about it a little bit before I started recording. So I read a book probably a little bit too young. I was probably a little bit too young to read the book that I was reading, but it described child abuse very vividly. And I don't remember, and I'll say it now, it never traumatized me, but it did deeply affect the way that I approach the world, the way that I approach other people, because, like you said, you never know what someone else is going through. And I
Mhm.
remember reading this book and feeling like, I really have to approach the world with kindness because not everybody does. And learning that at such a young age, I think has really molded the way that I approach people that are foreigners, people that don't look like me, and I don't have a lot of, battles that some certain people do have. But I think that reading a book like that at such a young age really opened my mind, like bursted my mind wide open to the possibility that, everyone's going through different things and just approaching the world with a special amount of kindness and warmth that can make a difference. So, again, I think that this book, and especially reading it through the spells, and there's something so, like, beautiful about it, but I could see, like, a teenager reading this or, like, a 13-year-old reading this. Like, it's not I don't think it's mainly for adults, so I wanted to mention that as well. I also wanted to ask you, so you describe your childhood as haunted. So what did that feel like as a child? And not just looking back as an adult, but, like, when you were a child and you were feeling those things, how did it feel?
I love that you asked this question. I feel like, in terms of my book title and why I titled A Haunted Childhood, because there are so many different versions of me that I feel like are ghosts that were left in my childhood. So, again, that little girl that was unseen and unheard and unloved, she's still there, sitting there waiting at age 6 for mom to come back home. She's, there at age 13, not knowing why she feels so alone in the world. And then she's there again at 18, uncovering family secrets that completely shatter her foundation. So there's those versions of me that are there that are ghosts that will always be. And it's just learning to live with them and not letting them control me.
That is a really eloquent way to put it, and I think a lot of us can kind of anyone who's been through something that's traumatic, sometimes we can, put ourselves or put that version of us into a box, and sometimes which something that I really resonated with your book, which, I just wanna say it here, is that I really I felt empowered to look back at some of the things that I experienced because through your spells, it felt almost cathartic, like it felt like almost cathartic for the character, if that makes any sense. So I thought to myself, like, how cathartic would this be for me to really look back at that little girl, who I was when I was 6 years old and going through all these things, and to really kind of honor her, but sit with her and what
Yes.
she felt and everything. Like, your book really opened my eyes to the thought that healing isn't easy and it's not supposed to feel good. Like, you're supposed to sit with those moments and really resonate with them. And that is healing. It's not easy. It's not like, oh, I'm going to feel like rainbows and butterflies today because I healed.
I will say that a lot of people, I think, they don't understand what healing means. So, healing doesn't mean happiness. Healing means allowing yourself to feel all these emotions, the good and the bad, the yucky and the uncomfortable, and being okay. Again, not letting, so I say this all the time. So, understanding my trauma meant understanding my brain, understanding that this is my decision making brain. This is my prefrontal cortex. This is what's in control like 90% of the time. Now, I would say it's probably reversed in my earlier years. However, in the in the back of your brain is a small little part called the amygdala, and that is your little panic button that gets hit all the time. And so when that happens, it's really important to understand that you can't let your panic brain drive your machine. You can't give the keys to an 8-year-old and expect them to go to the store and come back in one piece. So, oftentimes whenever we're triggered, we respond in the way that we did when we were first either traumatized or the things that are heavier stick to us. So sometimes an 8-year-old responds whenever it's me that's panicked, and you can't let them take control of the situation. You know, you have to be the adult, and that's healing, is understanding when you're in that mindset and being able to take a breath and step back and be like, okay, you're angry about this, and that's okay. Let's sit with that for just a minute and give yourself permission to feel.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that there's so much power in like you said it. And it took me so long to realize this, by the way. But I think
Same.
it's something that helps me is labeling it, like labeling it. Like I feel angry because then
Mhm.
that takes it away from me because it's not like I am this emotional, outraged person. No, I have this emotion and I'm feeling anger,
Yep.
and just being able to label that really takes it I don't know, it kind of takes me outside of the feeling and then I'm just able to manage the feeling. And then I know like, okay, this is
Yes.
anger, like it's normal. And then I get to sit with it and I don't feel like it's something I'm doing wrong, if that makes any sense.
It does, makes perfect sense. That's exactly why I write as often as I do. I journal as often as I do, because it gives me that ability to be like, okay, well, the 8-year-old's not driving the car right now. I'm going to take control of this. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this out. I'm going to write how I feel. Sometimes I'll even like in bold just write out, I feel angry about X, Y, and Z. And just that alone is just awareness is seriously the first step to so many different things. And just being aware of your emotions and allowing them, it's game changing when people allow that to happen.
I love that. And I think it's really important to talk about it because I don't think a lot of people recognize that. And it's kind of like
Yeah.
one of those things that you do have control over. So it's nice to use it. You're able to label that and you're able to sit with it. And so I think that that's great. I wanted to talk to you also about so there's this theme, especially in the first part of your series of the storm. So
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about the storm. You wrote it wasn't just weather. It was a creature and it found me. You described the storm as if it was alive. What did that moment represent for you and what does it feel or what does it represent for you now as an adult?
As poetically as I could put it, that was a near death experience for me. That was my first memory. And that was the book literally starts out with me almost dying.
Yeah.
And you
And it
can
was so
feel that it,
innocent, chasing a mitten. It was like, I could see my daughter doing something like that, like her
yes.
favorite red mitten, like
Yeah, exactly, and I don't know, I might be showing my age here, but there was a blizzard of '93 that was huge, and it completely rocked, like, Tennessee really hard. That's where I'm from, and this, to a 3-year-old, was a huge storm, and it was early morning, and I had just snuck out, and nobody knew I was out, and that was my first formative memory. So I wanted to represent the darkness of death and consequence and, kind of the awful things in life. And that started with the darkness and this shadowy monster that starts to follow the narrator that appears in the first chapter. And you kind of notice the narrator's going through panic. She's talking about how it feels like there's a bird behind her rib cage just flapping its wings and she's panicked. And then all of a sudden there's a calm. And then just as the calm comes, there's a dark figure that's coming for her. So that's that impending doom that's there, that's present, that makes itself known to the narrator. And that's kind of where the story begins.
okay. So next you wrote, the storm wasn't the scariest part, it was feeling seen. And what did you mean by that? Because I feel like a lot of children that are in certain environments, they become hyper vigilant, but I don't know if I'm reading too much into the moment. So I wanted to ask you. So, what did you mean by that? By the storm wasn't the scariest part, it was being seen.
I love that you asked this question. I would say that it is mostly, sorry, I'm going to get emotional.
No, no, no. And thank you for being so raw and vulnerable and for opening up.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. A child who grows up in such immense trauma and turmoil and just chaos in the family feels like a ghost, unseen. So to know that this creature in the forest coming out looked at me, paid attention to me, I felt it. I felt the connection between it, at least in the storyline and what I'm describing and writing about. So it's that feeling of being seen by this impeccable doom and longing to be seen by those around me and not.
And being seen by something so dangerous, but still
Yes.
feeling seen, which is so
Yes.
powerful for for someone so little, especially because I believe at this time you were 3, correct?
I was, yeah.
Yeah. So that is so powerful. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about the environment that you grew up in, because it's really depicted throughout your series really well. But you wrote, "Some women are taught to disappear while they're still standing in the room." When did you realize that your voice had been taken from you? And I can kind of resonate with feeling like that as a little girl, where it's kind of like children shouldn't be heard. You know what I mean? Like you're just supposed to be
Should be
seen,
seen,
kind
not
of.
heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was kind of my motto growing up. Anything that I had to say or to question was discarded and made irrelevant. I never felt seen or heard in my family at all. I would easily say that I was surrounded by incredibly selfish people that, of course, were fighting their own battles, but at no point in time did they look at this little girl and think, "Is she okay? All this change, is she okay?" And no one ever stopped to ask me that. So that's pretty hard still to handle, to deal with, but that's for me, that's the fuel that I need to be a good mom. I always make sure that I'm with my daughters, that they feel seen, they feel heard. A practice that I've always done and that I highly recommend for all parents is to never, and this is how what I've learned through photography and parenting over the past over a decade, is never stand above your child when you're talking to them, especially when you're disciplining them. You want to be eye to eye or lower than them so that you're not demeaning them. It's intimidating for anyone to have to look up to somebody that's angry at them. And that's, I felt like I was always in that revolving world of everyone that looked at me was just in disgust and anger, and I was in the way. And that transcended into deep self hatred as an adult that I had to learn to shed.
I think that that's definitely powerful to mention. And I also feel like a lot of people, a lot of adults, and maybe it's certain cultures. I come from a very Latin, old school Cuban culture, and I think it's the thought that mental health is not real
Hmm.
and that children are very, very flexible and that they'll grow out of it, like, oh, they won't remember this. They're 4, like they're not gonna remember any of this happening. Like they'll be fine. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about X, Y, and Z. They'll be fine. So I feel like it's really easy for certain people to kind of just not think about it, and to think that, oh, okay, they'll grow out of it. They'll grow up and this won't be a big deal for them. But to really sit down and to ask, because sometimes you don't realize what might be a big deal for somebody else. And especially somebody as young as 3 years old. Like, I think about my daughter and I'm like, sometimes I try and put her to bed and she'll leave her favorite Elsa doll downstairs. And to me, it's like not a big deal. But then she starts to talk to me and she's like, but Elsa can't be alone. She can't sleep alone. I have to be with Elsa. Elsa can't sleep alone. She's going to be cold. And then I thought to myself, and I was like, okay, for her, this is a big deal. She thinks that her Elsa doll's in danger. And I know it sounds so silly, but sometimes to really put into perspective that, sure, they might be kids and their mind might be elsewhere at times, but they really are there and they feel things in a different way than we might expect it. So I love that you said that, because I think it's easy for some people to kind of just, oh, they'll grow out of it.
Kids are resilient, but they're not made of stone. Kids grow into adults that have children of their own and have to face their own childhood through the eyes of their children. And a lot of people get re triggered by that. And if you're not smart about it and you stay ahead of it, you can really get swept up in it. I say all the time that healing doesn't mean that you're parenting out of spite, because a lot of the times that can come right back around on you. So, for instance, before I went through trauma therapy, I was very defensive in my mothering. So, if I felt like anyone was questioning my mothering, then I was a failure. And so if they would question something, I would feel like a failure. And it was in that deep want and desire to be a good mom, but at the same time, it was kind of re-triggering and making me not a very desirable person to be around because I was hating on myself so much that I wasn't my true self. I wasn't happy in the moment. I was sad or depressed or upset or worried and not able to like fully be involved and in the moment. So it's kind of like me trying so hard to be such a good parent was putting so much stress on me and really in turn was making my parenting even harder. Learning to love myself, that was a really good parenting move. Because how could you possibly teach your children self-love and respect if you don't do it yourself?
That's
So
so
that
true.
was a big lesson that I had to learn.
I love that. I feel like I do that a lot too. And sometimes we make it such a big point as moms to kind of make sure that some of the things that we felt they'll never feel, and then we hyper focus on this one thing, and then it makes us, like you said, like we get lost and we're not in the moment. As a mom, like these moments are so fleeting, and they
Mhm.
happen in a blink of an eye, you know? So I love that you said that. I'm going to carry that. I think I needed to hear that more than anyone. I'm tearing up and all. So I wanted to ask you, kind of in spirit of what we're talking about, your book states that some of us inherit the silence wrapped up in shame. When did you realize that your pain didn't start with you, that it was something that was inherited?
When I was an adult. So in my book series, you learn that my mother abandons me at a very young age. So I had a very estranged relationship with her until I was an adult, and I did reach back out and we did try again. And in those moments, I realized that the support that she should have had in those moments that she up and decided to leave wasn't there. She didn't have support. And me and her had that in common. I didn't have a lot of support either. I have my husband and he's wonderful and I love him. We've been together for 17 years.
Do you think that a lot of women are living in that same silence without even realizing it?
Let's
Because
see.
like you said, I feel like a lot of women, especially a lot of moms, we don't have a lot of that support, and we might have the most supportive partner in the world, but sometimes it might be easy to feel that way.
Yeah, I would say that having a supportive partner is important in understanding that your voice is important because whenever you start to finally be heard, then you realize, okay, I am worthy of being heard. So that was huge for me in regards to, meeting my husband and him just validating that what I've gone through is hard and traumatic and how supportive he was that made it easier. Um, but I would say that I really started to understand that I got back to the question that you asked a minute ago.
That's how my brain works. It's like it bounces over here, then it goes over there.
Yeah, yeah. So with my mom and realizing that it wasn't just her and deciding to leave, it was this lack of support that she had, that she didn't have any support and she didn't have the mental strength that I have either. So she just kind of succumbed to her circumstance and fled. And I almost in a regard felt sorry for her had she not done several other things since then to just prove my point that maybe some people just are beyond help. As a young girl, I learned that you can't help anyone that can't help themselves. And if you're constantly going to be putting yourself in a position, um, and around people that are unsafe and that just constantly keeps you in a hole, it's best to just cut ties and save yourself. Everyone for themselves, right? Nobody makes it out alive. So I try not to put myself around those types of people anymore and understanding now just how important my voice is and showing that not just for me and myself and the fact that I love myself now is my daughters, teaching them, the next generation, how important their voice is. I think that that's really important work, especially as young as they are.
No, absolutely, and especially using their voice, how valuable their voice is, and even, like, and I always say it, like, just valuing your children's voice, even at the table, like, even if they have a question about, like, "Where did salt come from?" And even if it disrupts your day, like, make them feel seen, make them feel heard, because it will carry on. It will carry on to how they develop their careers, how they develop their relationships, how they develop their friendships, how they develop themselves, how they develop their relationship with how they love themselves? So
Yes.
I love that you said that, and I love that your girls have you, like, you are their safe space, you know what I mean? And you've made it such a point to be that for your girls and to be that lighthouse, and so I wanted to ask you, because in your book, you wrote that every storm has a lighthouse, and that he was mine, speaking about your pawpaw. So you describe him as a lighthouse. How important is it for a child to have, even if it's just one safe person, that one person that they can kind of just feel like that's their rock?
Yeah, that's hugely important. Like I was talking to you earlier, you can't truly start to heal or get through or understand something until you have a sense of safety. If you're constantly feeling like you're in danger, then you're never able to reflect and feel comfort. You're constantly on edge. So he was that for me. The house was always chaotic and shifting, and he was always there and constant. And through therapy, I actually realized just the impact that he had on my upbringing alone in the few short years that I have him. I don't want to give too much away, but early on in part 1, my papa passes away. So, it was a very hard death for me to come to terms with, but it was literally also the breaking down of our family system. He was the glue that held us all together, and shortly after his death, everything began to unravel, and for me, just symbolizing him as the light just felt right. Another neat thing that I don't know if you've noticed yet is that in part 1, in the early chapters, the title "Keeper of the Light," I think is chapter 4, that's in reference to my papaw, and then in part 3, I think it's chapter 5, if I hope I'm right, it's called Guardian of the Light, and it's talking about my husband and just
Oh, I
finding that
love
light
that.
again. Yes, yeah, I'm gonna cry.
That's so
But
beautiful. Me too, girl. Me too.
I wanted to reference that the light that I lost with my papa, I found in my husband, and that's just having that one person that was safe, his memory carried me through the rest of my childhood until I was able to find my guardian of the light.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you found that. And I love that because I was going to ask you, like, how do you think that he changed being that rock for you? Like, how do you think that he changed the trajectory of your life? And I think you said it so beautifully, like, so beautifully. And I think that for everyone who's listening, you might not even have kids, you might not be a grandpa, but you can still be that lighthouse for a kid. And I think that as we've seen, and as we've heard, will have a monumental change on that child. And if you can make a difference in someone's life, like I think that there's nothing greater to aspire to. But I love that just being a rock and stability for children. I think a lot of children don't have stability. And I think that being that is so essential. So I actually come from my husband's in the military. So that's a lot of instability in that sense, like we're constantly moving. And so I think of that all the time and I'm like, see, I got emotional again. I think of that all the time and I'm like, just being that rock for my children is
You're home.
yeah,
The
that's so
building may change.
powerful.
Yes, but you are home. You and your
Yeah.
husband are home, and you guys you might move, but together you're the sense of home. You're what makes it from a house to a home. Absolutely.
So
And
beautiful.
it's so important too, like you were saying, if even if you don't have children, if there is a child in your life, you could be that for them. If you're an
Yeah.
educator or if you're in social work or whatever the case is where maybe you're involved with children to some degree, you can always make a difference, especially the ones that are struggling to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that there's a lot of women who don't want kids, and I think that that's perfectly fine, but still love children and wanna
Yes,
be able to make a difference, and I think that there are so many ways that you could do that, and you don't have to be a parent, like, you can just be, like, that rock that and it sounds so easy, but I feel like it's very challenging because I have to do it with my daughter, but just being that stability for a child it's a lot of responsibility, but it's a beautiful thing if you get to do it for a child, so I just wanted to mention because you don't have to have kids to be able to do that.
exactly.
So I also wanted to kind of get into a little bit more into kind of the darkness that you experienced, and so you wrote, "This time it held me. It didn't demand anything from me." There's this presence that you describe, the darkness that actually held you. What did that represent? Because for me, as I was reading it, it almost felt like the darkness was comforting, which I don't know if
Mhm,
it was the intent. But so I wanted to talk to you about it because it was a very kind of like conflicting moment for me as a reader, but I loved it.
mhm.
So I was like, I have to.
I'm here for this.
Yes.
Yes, no, you're right in assuming that. Absolutely, that's a great question. So we become comfortable in the chaos that we are grown in, right? So you learn to just lean into it. what becomes comfortable. I was having a conversation with someone the other day in regards to in part 2, where the first adult relationship that I have is with a drug dealer. Seriously, I'm right back in it, right? So, it's just understanding that even though that it's comfortable, it doesn't mean that it's right. And so oftentimes, I would find comfort in the chaos because that's what I expect to come. But, growing and healing is realizing that in those moments, they don't get to define you.
Yeah. And you wrote about being like about it being like even when the world went silent, that it being the one thing that remained.
Mhm.
And so later when everything starts to fall apart, it's the only thing that stayed. So why do you think that that is? Do you think that sometimes people form attachments to their trauma or the darkness
Yes.
or the chaos because it's kind of like you said, it's like that one stable element that you can kind of identify in your day-to-day life?
Yes, absolutely. As you read throughout my series, like literally my house changes, my guardians change, everything changes, the traumas change, but the darkness only shape shifts. It kind of it starts out as this eerie shadow monster that is in the snow, and then it's in the hallway and it's creeping me out. But then it sets up shop under my bed and I start to wear it as a cardigan. So it's growing and evolving with me, but it is the only constant that was familiar, was being mistreated, being misheard or unheard and feeling unseen.
In in regards to kind of like your family dynamic, there's a scene, and I don't wanna give too much away, but I do wanna talk about it because it was one of the most powerful parts that I've read so far, and it says, "Love can arm itself, and sometimes it aims without blinking." Can you kind of describe what you experienced in that moment for those who haven't had the pleasure of reading your book without giving too much away?
Oh gosh, I don't know how I could even get into that without giving away that particular scene, but I will say that oftentimes that whenever we're in the heat of the moment, we can oftentimes target the ones that love us the most, that are closest to us, and even though that's not the intent, they feel the brunt of it. That's about probably as much as I could say without giving that particular scene away.
That's fair. So how do you think that witnessing something like that as a child shaped your love life later on?
Yeah, so, like I said earlier, my first adult relationship was with somebody who, pretty much was the epitome of what I had grown up in, just chaos and constant. So, I was really comfortable with that, and then I just started to realize, well, I might be comfortable with that. Is this the environment that I want children to grow in? And so I really started to look deeper into my own maturity and understanding that this is not the partner that I need in my life. So when I did meet the right partner in my life, it didn't feel right at first. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop for so long and then realizing it's not going to happen. So that was really big for me.
Yeah, because I really wanted to ask you because I know that for some people who have had certain traumatic memories and they can shape the way that you look at relationships, not even romantic relationships, like relationships in general. So I wanted to ask you, based off of your experience, if somebody is facing those, how can you start untangling those feelings and those memories so you can start to build healthier relationships moving forward that aren't based off of trauma?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, number one, you have to, and I've said this several times already, you have to be in a safe space with safe people. So if you're in the environment in which you've grown up in, or you're still with that abusive spouse, you're not going to heal. You have to find safety, and your brain and your nervous system has to rest. Then you could begin unpacking your traumas. And in my experience, writing was the best thing to do that. It really helped me think of it like your trauma is just this big ball of yarn that's been knotted all together in different colors and strands. And you have to piece each one apart and deal individually with each one, at least the layers in which, if we're going to relate this to trauma, you at least have to hit the highlights. You don't have to go through every single traumatic event that you've gone through in your entire life, especially if you've got a whole book's worth of trauma to write about. There was a lot of stories that didn't make it in, the point being is that the ones that were the most impactful were the ones that I faced head on.
I love that, being able to face your fears head on. And I really want to talk to you because this whole book, or the whole series, not actually the whole series, but at least the first two, and correct me if I'm wrong, are really written in the perspective of a child. And then the third one is more about like alchemizing
Yes.
everything and harnessing all of the pain that this narrator has felt through the first two series. And so I wanted to speak to you about the concept of like the forgotten child, because I feel like it's a concept that can be applicable, like you said, like with foster care systems and stuff like that. So I wanted to ask you, you wrote, the child showing up in the same shirt 3 days in a row wasn't forgetful. It was that she was being forgotten. So you described this feeling of being forgotten. What does that feel like for a child?
Uh, it makes you wonder if you're worthy of being seen. It makes you question your self-worth, and that sticks with you. It's definitely a tough subject, and feeling unseen and unheard, and that's still I can still now, if I feel those things in a moment, if I don't identify them, my emotions can get ahead of me sometimes, and I gotta reel it back in and be like, "Whoa, whoa, it's because you feel this way, and it's understandable." You get this sense about you that, or at least I have, where it's like, I'm an adult. I don't have to feel these things anymore, and I'm not going
Yeah,
to. So I'm going to make my voice heard, and I'm going to be present, and I'm going to feel loved because that's what I've created for myself.
I love that, creating your life and being able to, which is really, again, the third part of the series about alchemizing your pain is, to me, it was such a beautiful way to finish the series because it was such like a full circle moment, and it really showed me like this could really be done, like this is something that it doesn't have to be, it might always be painful to look at, like I could turn it into something beautiful. It could be painful to look at in retrospect, but still be something beautiful now because I turned it into X, Y, and Z, if that makes any sense. But there's another
Yes.
scene in the book that I really felt deeply. And so there's a moment where the school nurse starts to kind of take care of you quietly. And so I wanted to ask you, how did that feel to be seen, to finally feel seen as a child and by someone who's a stranger?
I don't know why. Out of the whole series, this is the one that always gets me. Talking about this woman and her grace, and just being able to see that, just again to feel seen. I felt so alone, and like no one was paying attention to me. My whole belief system was falling all around me. My dad was gone, my papa was gone, my whole family was falling apart, but she saw that, and she didn't just turn a blind eye. She leaned into it and made sure that I had food, and made sure that I was taking a shower, and making sure that I was cared for and loved for. And it made me enjoy school, and I honestly continued that love of education. I'm a homeschooler now. So just knowing that, I know that she's no longer with us, and I hate that, but if her family's listening and they know me and they know the story, her kindness was just, it can never be repaid, and it stuck with me for all these years. And that's really important for, like, again, what we were saying earlier with educators and people who might work with children. You never know the effects that you're gonna have on a child. Um, you know, 3 decades later, I'm sitting here writing about it.
Yeah.
That kindness is something that just sticks with you, especially whenever you feel just so alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that idea of simply just kindness, like something that we can really all control. Like we really have that in our power. Is just to be kind to others, even when we think that they might not deserve the grace, give it anyways. Give it anyways because you never know what the other person is going through. And yes, to teachers, educators, social workers, nurses. I'm a nurse at heart. I've been a nurse for years, and so that scene really resonated with me because sometimes, especially for nurses, like we have so many patients to care for. We have, and whether you're working for in the hospital or whether you're working in a school or whether you're working in the home health setting, like just realizing like how much of an impact your role has, like the small acts of kindness, the things that you might not even realize but are really making a monumental difference in your patients. And I loved reading that scene. It was a really heartbreaking scene for me to read as well because I was like, wow, like how heartbreaking that somebody like it took a stranger for her to feel
Yeah.
seen. You know what I mean? Like it
Mhm.
couldn't have been anybody else that's surrounding this poor little girl. Like it had to be a stranger. And let it be. Let it be the stranger because it needed to happen. But to
Mhm.
me, I was like, I had to ask like how that felt because to me as a reader, it was very impactful.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of spoken about the spells here and there, but the spells were really one of my favorite parts of the whole book. So I want to talk about the spells a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, a book of healing, spells woven from old scars. I loved it. I almost have it memorized at this point. So, how did you come up with the idea of turning your trauma into the spells? Was it that idea that we spoke about earlier, that your obsession with kind of like the darker things and being able to kind of like merge the 2 so beautifully? Is that the birth of the spells, or was there a specific moment that you can think of that you were like, "Oh, these spells have to be in my book?"
Yeah, no, I felt like once like what we were talking about earlier, whenever I was going through trauma therapy and started to journal and those heavy emotions were coming and I was allowing myself to feel it, that spark of inspiration was the spells. It was understanding that the grounding exercises that I'm doing through therapy could be alchemized into these really neat spells. And again, I want to reiterate, not witchcraft because I'm from the South and, Southern people frown upon a number of things. So
Okay, that's fair.
I
I'm
wanna
writing I'm
say yeah, yeah, yeah. So in Tennessee, it's like, we had this whole thing when Harry Potter came out that, like, everyone was up in arms and really upset that schools were allowing us to read such witchcraft. So I wanna reiterate, it's not
not
witchcraft.
witchcraft.
Yes, so it's meditation, but given that Tim Burton Grimm-esque feel to it. And again, the spooky things, the aesthetic. I love Halloween and ghostly things and all of the darkness. That was something that just kind of felt natural in telling my story that of course I wanted to make it spooky. And of course I want to give it this vibe. And why not make it magical? So not necessarily like again like witchy, but definitely on the term of magical. And in the sense of like magical realism and taking the everyday and making it more magical and especially through the eyes of a child and how they see the world and how things might feel more magical for them and understanding that and honoring that for the children that's in your life. Like you were
I
saying
love
earlier, it might you might not think that it's a big deal that you left that doll downstairs, but your child does and
yeah.
that sticks with them and whether or not they're going to feel seen about that it really matters.
Yeah. No, I love that, and so I wanted to kind of ask you because I love the concept of alchemizing pain. So of alchemizing and I love the concept of bringing magic into something that was so traumatic for you as a kid
Mhm.
and being able to kind of like sprinkle some magic into it. I think that that's so beautiful. So when you were writing them, at any point in time did it feel like you were kind of rewriting what you experienced in your past?
Okay, so that's really I'm glad that you asked that. So in order to get through my story, there's 2 things I had to do. One, you might not have noticed yet, the narrator is nameless. Her name never gets mentioned. My name. It's on the front page.
I've spoken to you as Barbara, like, I always just that's Barbara, you know? Like, I didn't even but you're so right, yeah, you never mention her name. I love that. That's so great.
Was too painful. I even tried the first couple of chapters with an alias, and I just couldn't do it. It was just too hard to associate myself with a name that I kept having to write that's drenched in all this trauma. So I thought it would be interesting too to give it that little feel so that it feels a little bit more mysterious, but also relatable because it kind of puts the reader into the little girl's shoes. It makes them feel
On
what she's
input.
feeling. Yes. Yeah.
I didn't notice it, but I think it's because of that aspect that I was like, "Oh, like Barbara, like, this is Barbara," you know, like, I just didn't think about that aspect, but it's so true, yeah, you never mention her name, and I love that
Yeah,
because it's
yeah,
true, like, she does feel like the narrator feels nameless, she feels unseen, she feels like she doesn't have that title, you know? So I didn't notice it, but I love it.
yeah, and the second part is that really interesting thing about this series is that in order to write it, me being nameless, I had to create the covers first. Again, I always knew that it was gonna be in 3 parts, and I kinda knew I know the plot. I know
Yeah.
what happened. So, that wasn't too hard in regards to that, but I went ahead and designed the 3 covers here. I'll just show everybody real quick. Yeah. So I assigned myself a character for each section, and I disassociated so hard that I, like, in my mind while I'm writing, have this director's hat on, and I have the megaphone, and I'm calling the shots. And I think 8% of the story is to the point, exactly how it happened, even as awful and, like, unbelievable as some of the things are, they're true. But some of the little things that I was able to go in and change were, like, power moves for me. So things that I wish I would have said or done in the moment that I didn't. 'Cause of my trauma, I froze.
Yeah.
But now I
You
have
wish
the
you
power,
would've.
and I got to do that. I got to tell my side in what was going, like, the alarms going off in my head, like, "Say this, you idiot." I
Yeah.
actually got to say that. So it was a little bit of a power play there in being able to take some of the things that was said or done to me and being able to be like, have that quick comeback that I didn't maybe have.
I I love that, I love that. Do you think that there were any other strengths that you realized in kind of writing out this traumatic experience? Because I think writing is a good form of outlet, of opening the doors and not feeling judged and, like, leaving it all on paper. So I wanted to ask you if there were any other strengths that you realized through this process.
Um, Honestly, just my ability, my sheer will to do whatever the hell I put my mind to. It really made me respect myself more for that because I understand that writing your own story is quite difficult. Not everybody does it, but almost everybody wants to, right? Not for book purposes or publishing purposes, but for, like, your children or people in your life. So knowing that I was able to do that was such an accomplishment. I truly felt like I remember feeling those deep feelings of uncertainty whenever I started the manuscript and feeling like I'm at the feet of or at the base of Mount Everest and I just have to climb this impossible task and knowing, like, feeling completed with it and not only completed but, like, satisfied and proud of it. It's just like, wow, I can do anything I really want to.
No, absolutely. And this whole book is kind of you recollecting certain memories and things that happened to you at such a young, vulnerable age. But so you talk about remembering what was buried. So why is remembering so important to healing? Because I know a lot of people try and suppress it. So why is it the opposite? Why is it that remembering, talking about it, sitting with it, why was that so important to your healing process?
Yeah, so it's really common for people to just keep covering up and pushing down. And in my household, sweeping under the rug, that was our favorite thing to do. And we never actually addressed anything growing up. It was always just like, oh, well, that's a thing that happened and now it's done. Move on, get over it. Um, but as we all know, you don't get over it. I don't know where that came from or why anyone think that that's helpful or beneficial for anyone, but even these people that are all like, "Oh, well, let's sweep that under the rug," if you really get to talking to them about the things that they've gone through in their life, there's still things that bother them.
Absolutely.
And they just keep holding on to it. And it's like, why would you want that yucky feeling of all of these awful, horrible things? Like, I visualize a lot of things. I think that that's just my creative brain. So I literally visualize like a bottle right here. And why would I want it all the way up to the top, just stuffed with trauma and capped so that it's just bubbling over and that's constantly my nervous system, right?
Yeah.
I'm not good at hiding my emotions. I'm very much a wear my heart on my sleeve type of person. So I have to vent ever so often. And so um I really think that writing is a great way in getting that out and not feeling like a burden to other people because, everybody has their problems. I understand that. Not everybody can afford a therapist. I also
Yeah.
understand that. But writing, everybody has access to a pen and paper. And that gives everybody the chance to get out what's inside before they explode.
Yeah, absolutely. And was there ever a point in time where you suppressed what was going on, where that was easier for you? And was there a time where you kind of opened the can of worms, and what did that feel like?
Yeah, so in part 2, I kinda describe going through life and making everything a joke. That, I think, is a way that kids and teens deal with the things that have happened to them, is they just it's so much easier to make a joke about it, and I
Yeah.
did that for years, even up until meeting my husband. When he asked me about my family, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, my mom left me for the circus. Ha ha, it's
Mhm.
hilarious, right?"
Mhm.
Um, but that's how I dealt with it, was just
Yeah.
making it a joke, and then I would say it looked me right in the face when I had children of my own. Parenthood is staring me right in the face, and as well as my childhood, right side by side through the eyes of my child. So those first formative years of being a mom and mm, learning to open up more about my childhood. I got my diagnosis with PTSD. Well, it's technically CPTSD, complex post traumatic stress disorder. And that helped me tremendously in making sense of exactly how my brain works. And that was really big in my healing. And I learned that in my early 20s. So when my two older girls were really little. And that helped me tremendously, but there was still a lot of work that I had to do to get to where I am today.
I love the way that you phrased that because I think that a lot of people don't realize how much work it takes and how much recognizing these certain things, like even just recognizing how your brain works and realizing like it might not work how everyone else's works, that would be monumental to your healing because you get to give yourself that grace and you get to understand yourself a little bit better and how you need to heal and how you need to process things. And so I love that you were able to find that. And I have to
Yes.
ask, did at any point did writing through these traumatic events, did it resurface things that you didn't even remember or that you didn't realize at the moment were so traumatic or so impactful at the time?
Yeah, I would say definitely as you start to write the things that have happened to you, then it's like the very first spell in the book is the looking for, trying tapping into those things that were buried. And when you open up that wound, then it's like a filing cabinet in your mind. It's like, oh, here it is. And now you're starting to dive in a little bit deeper and you're like, man, I remember that, but I didn't like remember that. That wasn't, like, present in my memory with this until now that I'm deep diving into it, and I'm pulling these files out from this event and realizing this was way more traumatic than I remember it being, and then even more so, like, as I was writing my manuscript, my husband, who I write about all through part 3, he was my sounding board. He was the person that I was reading my books to as I was writing them. And he just, the look in his eyes on some of these stories, you can just tell he's just learning me all over again. And I kind of was too. I was learning myself all over again and really putting the pieces together, especially in regards to the generational trauma that I inherited. So writing more about my grandmother that I haven't thought about in years, and writing more about my mother who I haven't spoken to in years, and all of these things that I just kind of kept buried, like what we were just talking about. And then now I'm letting it out and breathe. And it can be overwhelming for sure, but it's important to take breaks. Ironically, I say that, and I will say that this book, I purged this manuscript. It was an epiphany that I'd never experienced before in my life. Like I said, once that spark of inspiration hit, I couldn't get it out fast enough. It felt like I was sick. I wrote the entire series in 1 week. I
That's
know.
crazy.
I
No,
know.
but I'm
I'm
sure
so
it was,
amazed
like,
that I did it.
a long time coming kinda thing, you know what I mean? Like, it was, like, it
Yes.
needed to come out kinda thing.
Yes, I felt like I describe it like a stomach flu.
Mhm,
Like, writing this from start to finish, it was like, I have to get everything out before I possibly can feel better.
mhm.
And my husband and my girls were so supportive that if without their support, I couldn't have done it. And I don't think that if I would have broke it up and wrote in a longer span of time that it would have been as impactful as the way that it was. Like, of course, it took me months and months and months to edit and go back and tweak and all of these things and hear from other readers and get
Yeah, but
criticism,
the
sure,
bones
but
of it, yeah.
the bones of it all was written within 1 week, and I'm grateful for that really impactful moment in my life and the support that I had to be able to do that.
I love that you talk about support, and I think it's also such an important thing that you mentioned a few minutes ago where you were talking about how not only did you have to relearn yourself through the process of writing these books or through the process of your healing, because that's really what it kind of sounds like a part of you really healed outside of therapy, but like through these books, it almost sounds like. And so I love that you mentioned that not only did you have to relearn parts of yourself, but so did your support system. So did your husband, and a lot of people had to support you along the way to get you where you are now. And I also wanted to ask you, being where you are now and having gone through all of the hard work that is some of the therapy that you've done through writing these books, through reliving some of these experiences, if little Barbara could look at you now, what do you think that she would say?
She would think I'm so cool.
Right?
I know
I
that.
think you're so cool.
Yeah. I do too. And that's taken me a really long time to be able to say that, but I can confidently say, like, yeah, I'm pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm a great mom and I'm a good friend. And I think that if I would have been around and been an adult in my little me's life, then I definitely feel like she would have felt less alone. And that is the core of this whole entire series is what would you say to your younger self? And that's something that all of us really need to ask ourselves is if you could go back, what would you say? And for me, I would definitely tell her I'm so proud of her. She carried so much for so long and to carry it all to this point where I'm at in life is just so beautiful and I'm so appreciative of her. She's so strong and I would pick her up and give her a big hug.
I love that, I love that, that was so beautiful. So beautiful. So, and I also wanted to take a little bit back, and we spoke about it a little bit ago when you had to kind of resurface thinking about your grandma and thoughts that you hadn't really thought about her in so many years, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about generational trauma. So, you touched upon generational patterns in your series. When did you realize that it didn't really start with you, that there was kind of layers to the onion?
Whenever I started to try to have an adult relationship with my mom, she started kind of giving me more insight as to her side of the story and hearing her opinion of other people in the family and how they were treating her and really connecting those dots from my own memories and what she's telling me really did make me understand that she thought she was doing good based off of what she had. And I get that. Um, and I also think that a large part of her just didn't believe in herself to be able to do it, and that's why she ran. I think that's why a lot of absentee parents run because they're afraid that they'll fail. So they just do it. They just fail. And for anyone who's estranged from their children, I mean, 18 and under children, if you are estranged from them, what are you doing? What are you doing? What in the world could be more important than the human being that you created? Pull your head out of where you know it is and
Mhm.
put in the work, whatever that is that you
Yeah.
need to do. I feel like that is just something that so many people need to hear. There's too many kids in our foster care system. There's too many parents incarcerated. There's too many people that just are out doing their own thing and not building up the next generation. Honey, that's what life's about.
Yeah.
We are here to build up the next generation for all of humankind. And if we can do that and make a better generation than the one we were given, why wouldn't we?
Yeah, exactly. That's really what it's all about, I think. And
Yeah.
so, do you think that awareness alone is enough to break these generational patterns? Or do you think that there's much more involved to breaking some of these generational patterns?
I would say recognition and awareness and acknowledgement, that is 80% of the work. Being aware and not just like, oh yeah, my mom's awful and I'm not going to be awful. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about on the inside of you, your awareness of your behaviors, why you're triggered, what upsets you, why did this make you upset? Is this because your inner child is damaged right now? Like that level of awareness. So not just realizing that you got a hand dealt to you. Obviously, a lot of us are in that boat. That's not the level of awareness that you need. You need awareness into your own behaviors and your own traumas and how they connect to the now. And that's how you begin to break that curse.
I love the way that you put it and talking about like breaking that curse because I know that a lot of people have experienced certain things in their childhood and then they carry it into their adulthood, almost sometimes seemingly without realizing it. So I wanted to ask you, what are some signs that someone might still be carrying childhood trauma into their adulthood? Because I know that some of us think like, okay, like I have it super buried deep down below, but it affects you and how you make decisions, how you approach relationships, and X, and Z. So I wanted to ask you, what are some signs that people might recognize within themselves that might realize I need to do more of that inner work and realize that there might be things that happened to me long ago that are affecting me now?
If you are just surviving in life and you are constantly weighed down, like you have physical pain, then your traumas are still affecting you. And we're learning that more and more whenever, we're learning that trauma literally wires your brain. And especially for those children that go through it and through the complex trauma that young children might go through, that stuff really sticks with you and you might feel like, "Oh, I'm in a safe place. I'm good. I'm whatever." But if you're still living life feeling like you're in a rush and that you're panicked and you're in an emergency situation, every single thing is do or die, then you're surviving and you're not thriving. You're not living. You're just trying to make it through. And there is better to life. You can slow down, but again, it's that level of awareness that you have to obtain. And deeper than that, it's that want, that will to want to do better, to recognize that maybe I could be a better person and do the work.
I I love the way that you put it, and we've spoken a little bit earlier in the podcast about doing the work and about how there's a huge misconception sometimes where people think that like healing is easy or healing is only like good feelings and happy feelings, but healing can actually be really hard. And at least to me, from reading your book, I feel like part of the narrator was healed through some of these spells. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I wanted to ask you, are there any, which might be a little bit intrusive of a question, but are there any real life or like any spells that you use now to help ground you and to help you stay focused and in the moment?
Absolutely. The first one, and it's so simple, everyone can do this spell, is deep breaths. I feel like not enough of us are stopping and taking deep breaths. And again, it's that survival mode, this fight or flight that's in us and we're just taking these quick rapid breaths and our heart's pounding out of our chest 90% of the time. And we're not taking a moment just to take a deep breath and take a calm moment just to approach a situation. And my favorite spell in the whole series is actually one that I referenced was inspired by my therapist. It was towards the end of part 3, but it is a grounding technique that I still use. It's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method where you see 5 things, you hear 4 things,
Oh
you
my God,
touch 3 things.
I've heard of this.
Yes, yes. So that to me is just so important whenever you do have those thoughts. Like for instance, I'll give you a great example. There is a smell smell in general for trauma survivors is huge. And I don't think that people realize that it is such a huge trigger. If you walk past someone who's been smoking a cigarette, what memories is that going to trigger for you? If you walk past a store that has a dog smell, what is that going to trigger for you? Certain food smells. Burnt popcorn is forever ingrained in my brain from that period of time where my food source was not steady and my house was disheveled and there were men in and out and that's all my mom would feed herself is burnt popcorn. So it's like I smell that and boom, right there, right? So realizing that, knowing that happened. So I was at the grocery store with my all 3 of my daughters. So I have a 16, 13 and a 2-year-old. And the 2-year-old was in the buggy, the cart, and my older 2 were standing beside me and they noticed a shift in my face. I couldn't hide it. And it wasn't anything I was trying to make super obvious, but I had smelled what smelled to me like my mom. It was this smell of like these musky perfume mixed with beer. And it's a smell that I hadn't smelled specifically in so long, but it was like, boom, there it is. And so realizing that and not letting it um, completely wreck me or cause me to start crying or cause me to want to rush through the checkout process with the cashier or to be unpleasant because now I've been triggered, I took a moment, I took a deep breath, and I'm looking around the store and I go through the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. And by the time I reach the cashier, I'm pleasant. It's fine. I come home and then I talk to my husband and I start crying. But it was enough for me to get home
Yeah.
and do what I need to do as a mom, as a wife. And then I get in my safe space and I can let go.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's human. We're allowed to do that. But it probably wouldn't be so great if I was to break down crying in the grocery store
Cashier,
checkout
yeah.
lane. So,
With your three
just
girls, yeah. Absolutely, but I love how you put it, like, your husband is your safe space, and, like, I bring it back to the lighthouse, like, he is your light, he is your lighthouse, and, like, as soon as you got to him, like, you melted, and
mhm.
so such a beautiful way to put it. I
Children
don't
do
know
that
how many
too, and parents don't
Yeah,
realize this. I want a lot of parents to
100%.
realize this. So you'll go pick your kid from school and they'll be like, you'll say, "How was your day?" And they're like, "Fine." And then maybe 2, 3 sentences in, they're boohooing and you're like,
Yeah,
"What happened?" It's because you're that safety net. They're so safe with you. Now they can open up what they've held in all day, that little thing that irritated them early in the morning they've held on to. But now you're their pillow. You're right there and you can be that for them and to know that they're being heard and not dismissed. "Oh, why are you crying again? Don't be why are you so sensitive?" Like, "No, don't be
yeah,
so dismissive.
yeah.
Listen. Just listen." That's all that kids really want is just to be seen and to be heard.
I love that, I need, like, a minute. We need a break, okay?
I understand it's some deep stuff.
No, it is, and especially being a mom, and especially because, like, there are some times where, like, it's so easy to get lost in that moment where, like, your kid's crying or he's having a fit and, like, you're frustrated, but then realizing, like, that's all it is, like, they've been being so strong all day, and you just kinda, like,
Yes.
let loose with you. It's such a beautiful thing, but it's pulls my
Yes.
heartstrings, I don't know why.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I wanna ask you, I wanna kind of close it, um, a quote that I got from your book that really stuck with me and resonated with me, so I wanted to kind of bring it into the episode, and it says, "You're not broken. I hope you find your light." So, if someone listening feels like they relate to parts of or your story in its entirety, where do they begin in finding their light?
Again, they have to find that sounding board. You can't do this alone. You need support. I'll be your support. Hit me up. Get in my DMs. I would love to talk to you. I would love to chat with you. I would love to boost you up. I believe in you. I believe in everyone who wants to heal, who wants this. Like I said earlier, you can't help anyone that can't help themselves. That was a life lesson I learned very early in life. But if you're willing to put in the work, there are always people around that are willing to help you and boost you up and support you. And I'm one of those people, and I just want readers to know that. But at the end of the day, if you don't believe in yourself, I do, because I certainly didn't believe in myself, but now I do. And that instilled in me that anybody can do whatever they want to put their mind to. And if that's healing from your traumas, then you absolutely can, but you have to want it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I love the way that you put that. And I want to finish off the episode with a couple lighter myth busting. They might not be that light, but myth busting questions.
Yeah.
So, first myth busting question. So, myth or reality? If you've healed, you shouldn't feel any more pain about it.
Oh, myth.
Totally.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
My whole grocery store story just a second
Yeah.
ago would let you know that. Yeah. There's still things that's going to come up that's going to be triggering, that's going to be hard. But again, it's understanding that in that moment, I wasn't going to be reactive to my emotions. I wasn't going to let the 8-year-old drive the car. I wasn't going to allow my traumatized self to make those life altering decisions or those even to have control of me in that moment. It's understanding that yes, these things are hard and they are difficult, but I am my true self and I can handle these things. And allowing yourself to feel these things is really important even as they resurface. I'm never going to get over the death of several of my family members. I don't want to give away too much in the series, but there's some death and it's really hard. And anytime that I want to revisit those people, I can in my mind, but it doesn't make it any easier just because I've quote unquote healed from my traumas. It's just I can manage myself better. I can manage my emotions better. And I'm always going to be human. I'm always going to feel things. And that's healing, is allowing yourself to feel.
Yeah, I think that it's a big misconception that healing is easy or that once you've healed, it's easy, but it's not. I think it's just healing. The term healing is more so having the tools to know what to do, at least for me, having the tools to know what to do when you do feel those things. So when you are in that moment, like knowing how to take
Yes.
yourself out of it and still having it there, you don't have to suppress it. It's still there. It's still part of you. You can't change that. But
Mhm.
knowing how to like having the tools available to use to you that you can kind of rise above it or come
Yes.
out of it.
Having that toolbox of resilience, that's what me and
Yes.
my therapist would call it. So,
Yes.
the grounding method was one that I use all the time. Another one that I didn't realize that I was using, but that she had informed me, like, "Yes, absolutely, this is a tool in your toolbox," is anytime I would feel overwhelmed, I'm always drawn to just go and take a shower. And she was telling me that it's sensory overload, cleansing not only your body, but your senses and your nervous system, and it's basically pulling you out of your head and making you pay attention to your physical body through these sensations, whether it be hot or cold water, the scrubbing or whatever. And so it's this, pulling yourself out of your mind and bringing yourself to the present and having these toolboxes so that you can always just pick up whatever works for you in that moment. Like, obviously, I'm at the grocery store. I can't be like, hold on, I got to go home and
Yeah.
take a shower.
Gotta go
So,
jump in the bath.
yeah, excuse me, darling.
Yeah.
No, so just knowing, I guess, at the appropriate time what you can use just to get yourself through the moment. And again, having that person that you can call or that you can go over to their house or that you can come home to and be like, this happened to me and this was really hard and I just needed someone to hear me and acknowledge me and being able to cry about it. Like that's a tool in your toolbox. And a lot of people, I think, just they run from the icky feelings and they
Mhm.
feel like if I'm sad, that's a bad thing. I don't want to be sad. I need to run from this. The more you tell yourself not to be sad, I'm sorry, you're just going to be sadder.
Yeah.
You
It's
got
gonna
to
find
face
you.
it. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's gonna find you and it's gonna boil, and then it's just gonna be like it's not gonna be sadness, it's gonna be depression if you just keep, like boiling or letting
Fighting
it
it.
boil over. Exactly, yeah. So, next myth busting question is your parents loved you, then it couldn't have been that bad.
Okay, so this is something that I hear from so many people and it breaks my heart, honestly. I hear people say, well, my story wasn't as bad as yours. But whoa, hold on. No, no. You don't get to dismiss your life, your experiences, your adverse experiences, and compare it to something as ridiculous as my story and say it's not that bad because it wasn't as bad as what I had. Like we were talking earlier in the show, just because something you don't understand how it affects another person like a child, you don't understand that why they're so upset. It doesn't mean that it's not impactful, that it's not important to them. So everybody has their own level of what makes them feel unseen or unheard. And yes, you might have had a mother that was there and that it was attentive, but you're never going to hear me say, well, at least you have a mom. Like,
Yeah. Who says that?
no, like, everybody
Yeah,
has their own battles that they're facing and you can't compare yours to others. That you're never going to get anywhere.
absolutely, and I think that that's so important because even myself, like, I grew up telling myself that a lot. It could be worse, like, "Okay, this happened, yeah, but it could have been worse," like, "It could have been X, Y, and Z."
Yeah.
And so, I always found myself doing that, but it's so true. It's really about just recognizing it and, like, "This happened, this did affect me, don't trivialize it, don't compare it," and just sitting with it, I think is so important, and it
Yeah,
kinda
you have
brings
to
me into
acknowledge it that it's an experience that happened and you can't dismiss it because well someone else went through something harder and they're fine. Like you don't
yeah,
know that. You don't know that they're fine. Even
absolutely.
if they write a whole series about it, you don't know that they're fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's also a big misconception. So it kind of brings me into the next myth busting question. And it's that a lot of people think that the trauma only affects your childhood. So why open the book if it's not affecting you now? So, myth or reality, trauma only affects you in your childhood and not your adulthood.
Oh, definitely a myth. If you're not facing those things that have haunted you, then they're going to keep haunting you. They're
Yeah.
going to keep sticking around and showing up in very unpleasant situations. In these moments when your panic button is hit and maybe in a fight with your spouse or you're battling an issue with your child, these moments are going to pop up and they're going to hit you like a ton of bricks, and you're going to be debilitated by it. So it's better just to face it sooner rather than later. And again, suppressing anything, all it does is just bottle it up and creates immense amounts of pressure. And you physically feel that. You physically feel tense muscles and your heart racing and sweat pouring, and it physically can affect you if you don't deal with the thing that, again, have haunted you for years.
I couldn't agree more. I think that sometimes a lot of us feel like they'll get that feeling where it's like, and it's like a trend now where everyone's like, "Oh, like my body thinks I'm being attacked by a bear, but I'm really just X, Y, and Z." And I think it's important for some of us to kind of look at that and to be like, "Wait, why is this triggering my body to think that it's being or to act like it's being in fight or flight, like I'm being attacked by a bear? And like,
Yes.
what is it about this that is so triggering to me? Even if it's something as simple as speaking up for myself, as saying, you know what, I don't agree with that. And I would prefer it to be X, Y, and Z because it works better for me, blah, blah, blah. Even if it's something as simple as that, but like really thinking to yourself, like, okay, why am I acting like this? Like, what is it about this that's triggering me?
And
Um,
that's the level of awareness that I was talking about earlier that you have to attain in order to get onto your healing journey, is realizing, okay, well, why was I triggered by that? Why did that affect me so much? What about that relates to, what I know to be heavy on my heart? We all know what the deal is. It's just whether or not we want to admit to it or what we want to face.
yeah.
It's there, it's right there, but it's whether or not you choose to keep pushing it down or you decide to let it out and, again, allow it to happen. Allow those emotions to flow through you so that you can get through it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Getting through it, like letting it flow through you so you can get through it and you can't ignore it. Like you just have to go through it all step by step
Yes.
and all of it.
It's the child's book, going on a bear hunt. Can't go around it, can't
Hmm.
go over it, can't go under it, gotta go through it.
Yeah, you have to go through it. So I always finish off my episodes with a signature set of questions. They're very light, just to kind of close off the episode and let the listeners get a little bit more of a feel for you. So,
Yeah.
what's one habit that makes your daily life better?
Definitely coffee with my husband. We do that every single day. We will, at some point during our busy, hectic schedules, sit down and share a cup of coffee together. And we just talk about our day and, our goals. If it's early in the day, we talk about what we want to do. Or if it's at night, we talk about what we've done and just kind of that sounding board. That's something that's always been super important in our marriage, is that we take that time every single day to pour into each other, even just for a few moments.
What a beautiful way to end the day, especially like saying it exactly like that, like pouring, having a cup of coffee and pouring into each other. Like that's such a
Yeah.
beautiful way to put it. And it's like, I think that everyone should strive in finding that in one way or another, whether it's with your mom, your dad, your sister, your cousin, your best friend, your husband, your child, like whoever it might be, but like having that moment of like connection at the end of the day.
Yes.
I think that over doom scrolling any day. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so my next question is, what's one book that absolutely changed your life?
Okay, so I'm really big into self-help books,
Mhm.
obviously,
Me
and
too, I
I
love
would
them.
say the book, I can't even think of the title of it, but it's basically laying out the 5 love languages, and that really helped me understand that other people receive love differently than the way that I'm giving it. I could be just so incredibly there and present and, like, worship the ground you walk on, but if that's not how you're receiving love, then you're gonna take that as, like, obsession. So it's making sure that the people around you are receiving the love that they want and understanding, like, for instance, I have 3 daughters. I've mentioned this a couple of times. My eldest, she's very much a one-on-one quality time type of person. if I come up and, like, just give her a hug or a kiss on the cheek or something, that's not as impactful as me coming up and saying, "Hey, you wanna go grab a coffee together?"
Mhm.
And it's not that I'm spoiling her or giving her something. I could literally say, "Hey, wanna go aimlessly walk the aisles of Target together?"
Yeah.
And she will be like, "Yes,
Yeah.
game, set, point, let's go." Um, my middle child, she's very much affectionate. So while she does enjoy the time with mom, if I go up and give her a hug and tell her how proud I am of her and positive words of affirmation, like that's it for her. Um, and, even my little toddler, I understand that, like, right now in this point in her life, that touch is so important for her to connect with me and my husband and her sisters. So just making sure that she gets that daily dose of love, that physical touch and connection is really important to make sure that she feels loved, even though she's just itty bitty.
I love that. I'm gonna ask you to email me the name of the book because that's such a beautiful way to approach life is learning how to like love people better. I think that that's such a beautiful thing to aspire to, and it's so true. And I also feel the same way. I love that concept of like knowing how to love people the way that they want to be loved because I'm obsessed with that same concept, but in supporting people, like learning how to support people in the way that they feel supported. And I think I
Mhm.
didn't learn that until I gave birth, that I was like, "Oh, when I'm in pain, I don't want people to touch me, like, that's not supportive
Right.
to me," you know what I mean?
Right.
But, like,
Yes.
it is so applicable in, like, everything. Like, now I have this raw awareness of what helps me and, like and I wanna do it for other people, like, because sometimes I think what might be supportive is dropping off groceries for somebody, but in reality, like, they don't need the groceries, they want, I don't know, coffee, or they want the meal prepped, or they want something else, so, whatever it might be,
They wanted someone to
recognizing
sit and talk to them and not necessarily the
exactly.
act of service. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, so realizing that supporting people might be a little bit different and so I love that concept, I'm definitely gonna read that one, so I'm gonna email you later for the title.
Yes.
So, my next question is, if people could take away one thing from our conversation today, what would you want it to be?
That there are so many points in my story where it should have ended. Literally, chapter 1, part 1 was a near death experience. And I want everyone who's watching this to know to keep going. There were several points throughout my series where that should have been it. In part 2 alone, there were 3 suicide attempts that were talked about. Lots of hopelessness and feeling distraught and alone and feeling like this is never going to end. And I can tell you that one of the biggest pieces of advice that I had learned is you cannot fix a temporary problem with a permanent solution. And that those words are very powerful to me. Everything in life, and we're I believe in the Buddhist culture where they believe that all things are temporary. I firmly believe that even life itself is temporary, but in the moments that we're in that feel so heavy and so always and so certain, it will pass. And you just have to hold on. You just have to keep going because otherwise you'll miss out on so many beautiful things in life and you just don't even know what that could be yet. And why would you rob yourself of that?
Absolutely, I'm gonna ask you to repeat that one. It was, "You cannot fix a temporary problem with a permanent solution?"
Yes.
I love that one. Wow, that's a
Mhm.
good one. I'm gonna carry that one with me.
Yeah.
And it kinda leads me to my next question, but is that the best piece of advice that you've ever given or that you've ever received, or is there something else that
No.
comes to mind?
It's my favorite piece of advice, and it comes from self love. Talk to yourself like you would your best friend. So if you're
That's a good
feeling
one.
really down and you're like, God, I'm a failure. I really messed this up. I really just, I'm the worst. Like, nope, stop, pump the brakes right there. Would you tell your bestie that? Would you tell your childhood best friend that? Would you tell your husband that? Would you tell your child that? So why are you telling yourself that? So that's my biggest piece of advice is talk to yourself the same way that you would talk to a friend.
I love that. It's actually one of my resolutions this year was to talk to myself the way I talk to my daughter, because I talk to my daughter like, my God, she will. She's gonna bring down the moon. That girl's got like she's got the whole like I can't wait to see what she accomplishes, you know? But
Yes.
I was thinking to myself the other day, and I was like, I pour so much into her, and like how great would it be to pour some of that into me too?
Yes.
And I'm gonna say It's a challenge. It's not as easy as, like, and it's not, I thought it was woo-woo at first, like, I thought it was kinda like it wasn't gonna make a difference, but it makes such a difference in how you start your day and how you approach your problems and how you look at problems, like, they no longer feel catastrophic, you know, it kind of feels like, "Oh, you know, like, I've been there, done that, like, it's not the end of the world." And that's why I loved what you said before of, like, you can't fix a temporary problem with a permanent solution because I find myself in that kind of back and forth often, so that one really resonated with me. So I
Good,
love
good,
that.
I'm glad.
I love that. And so next one would be, what is something that you wish you learned earlier in life?
That it gets better. Um, and that, I'd mentioned this earlier in the podcast that, oftentimes whenever you've been through trauma and complex trauma, and this is all you've grown up in is this chaos, is whenever you become an adult, you become comfortable with that, so you kinda seek that out in other people. And, until you gain that level of awareness and understanding that, it might be a little uncomfortable for you to put yourself around the right people at first, but then it's just so fulfilling and you realize, like, this is what I've been missing all along, is this positivity that I needed, in this around these people in this environment. And you really begin to separate between, your past and the chaos and everything like that. And then whenever there are those moments whenever it pops back up, then that helps you realize just how awful it was. It's like, "Whoa, I haven't felt that way in so long," or, "I haven't thought about that in so long," and that was really deep. That was really hard. So, yeah, definitely finding that person.
Absolutely. I think it's so vital, and I don't know what I would do without kinda like my person and stuff. And kinda just take it back to what you said a little bit earlier, it's so true. I think that sometimes when it's all that we've seen, it's hard to kind of, bring something else into our life,
Mhm.
whether it's through a relationship or through a job or through partners that we pick or the way that we talk to ourselves or whatever it is. If it's all that we've seen, it becomes really hard to try and be anything else, which is, well, honestly one of the main reasons I brought this podcast is because I was thinking about my daughter, and I lost my dad at a young age and I don't have any videos of him. So I don't know, I can't remember what he sounds like. And I was like, oh, that sucks. Like, I wish I would have had all these recordings of him, of like him. And he was like the greatest, So like, I wish I would have had these recordings of him, of like him being able to talk through different life and stuff. And like being able to see different things that I didn't see. Cause although he was the greatest, he came with his flaws and his faults
We
and
all
stuff.
do.
And exactly. And I'm obsessed with the idea of being able or not being able to become something that you haven't seen before. So I wanted to create that for my girls. And I was like, being able to kind of shine light of conversations of things that, yeah, like people who have come across traumatic things in their childhood, but came out the other end and built something beautiful because of it. And like just an example, but like I'm so obsessed with that idea. And I know it's hard, but it's so important to really reflect and to have that with your person, to be able to share that with somebody, I think is so beautiful.
And your
But okay,
children will have these recordings of you talking to all of these different types of people, and that's beautiful. Like, just as equally as beautiful as knowing that my children have my life story on their bookshelves in their room. I'm
exactly.
working on my audiobook recording. They will literally have their mother speaking her
Voice.
life story. I mean, goals would be for this to be eventually become a graphic novel and an animated series. Like, what?
I
That would
love
be
that.
amazing, right?
Yeah,
So, I mean, if all of these goals and things come to fruition, I would be immortal to my children, and that would be
exactly.
just so beautiful. And
Priceless.
not only my children, my grandchildren, and that's isn't that what we all strive for?
Exactly, yeah, and especially, like, coming back full circle and speaking about, like, the lighthouse that your grandfather was, you lost him at such a young age, so, like, the possibility of being able to be that for your grandchildren, even if you might not be able to meet them as a great-grandparent, for example, I think is so beautiful, and I think creating something that might outlast you,
Mhm.
I think is such a beautiful concept too. And
I
I
love
think
that you
also
brought that up because I feel like my girls have been able to meet my grandfather through my series. Through
I
reading
love that.
about him, they can imagine him and they can think about him in a way that I don't think that I could have ever conveyed verbally to them, even through like physical storytelling, but them having this and being reflecting upon it forever. They'll have pieces of my family that I do want to treasure and I do want to remember. They'll always have that. And that's really cool.
I love that. I love that, and I think it's priceless. It's priceless, and I cannot applaud enough the work that you do and what you bring into this world because I think that there's a lot, especially now. There's a lot of, like, mindless stuff out there and stuff that doesn't really promote good, stuff that doesn't actually cause people to grow or force people to think critically or introspectively, and I think that your book does it in such a beautiful way, but also does it in a way that children might actually be able to understand, and, again, like we spoke, it might not be the seven-year-old, but it might give a different perspective, and so I think that you did such a beautiful job in the way that you wrote these novels and these series, so I can't
Thank
wait for it to
you.
come an animated series because I am speaking that into existence, it's gonna happen.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so I have one more question for you, and just to wrap everything up, I wanted to ask you, who is the most influential, badass woman that you look up to? It could be historical, it could be familial, dead, alive, whatever comes to mind.
So my middle child is going to love this answer, but hands down, Taylor Swift.
I love Taylor Swift. I
I
love this
do
answer.
too. I do too. I am a folkloral sorry, I'm a folklore girl. I listened to folklore on repeat whenever I was making this series. I related to so many of her songs in that album in my own storytelling. I feel like the song Peace fully encompasses me and my husband. The rain is always going to come if you're standing with me. I
Mhm.
feel that. The song 7, I felt like was just me and my best friend growing up and how we found comfort in each other and how we knew that our home lives weren't the best, but we had each other and that's all that mattered. Even down to just the poetic and the feeling that you get throughout that album, it really put me into the right mindset. Now, here's why I find her inspirational beyond the fact that she was inspirational to my series and through her music is she I know that everybody who knows of Taylor Swift knows what she's done to the music industry, and that is
Mhm.
taking back her masters and making sure that her music was hers. And had she not done that, I probably wouldn't have understood the magnitude of making sure that my story remains mine. So I've not ever submitted to a traditional publisher. And if I was to ever do that, it would have to come under the terms that I retain all rights to my story. A self published indie author. So my story is mine completely. I own my serial numbers. I own the story. I own the copyrights. It is mine forever and always. Amen. Because that just to me feels sacred. And how could I possibly give the rights to my story to anyone else? That just, it wouldn't sit well with me.
I could not agree more. So something else that I feel super passionate about is like starting something that's yours, whether it's like creating something that's yours, like whether it's a business, whether it's writing a book, whether it's a painting, whatever it might be for you. And I think that a lot of times we're so eager to kind of give up pieces of what's ours to fast track momentum or to fast track what we think is making whatever it is that we created successful.
Hmm.
And I think that it's such an important lesson to learn that these things take time, they're slow, and there's so much more power in it being yours and you doing it
Yes.
yourself. It almost makes it like so much more rewarding and so much more like you're so much more proud of yourself and it like amps you up even more and it fuels you to go even further. And I think there's a lot of power in that. I
Yes,
love Taylor
I
Swift.
firmly believe in this series. I know that if I was to submit to publishers, it would be a hit. I don't
Yeah.
doubt that. But again, being a debut author, I know that my leg to stand on is not pretty great. So I know that it would have to come with the terms of giving up a lot. And that's something I'm not willing to do, even if the success is slow, even if the recognition doesn't come as fast as I would like for it to. I'm putting in that work. I'm
Yeah.
marketing. I'm the one packaging up all of my signed copies and sending those out to my readers. So it's very personal to me. And I want my readership to know that my story is everything to me. And I truly appreciate anyone that wants to dive into this and explore my world.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on today, Barbara. It was
Thank you,
such a pleasure
Megan.
having you. I could talk to you for hours. So, needless
Same.
to say, oh
Instant
my God, it was
besties.
Yes, I know. It's such a breath of fresh air to talk to you. I loved having you on today. I hope to have you on in the future when your
Me
series becomes an
too.
audiobook or even maybe when it
Yes.
becomes an animated series. Like I have so much more that I would love. I could talk to you for hours, days. So such a pleasure having you today.